Hey there, everybody. I'm going to do a little talk about John Brown, and I'm going to try to keep my voice down because I don't really want this to be broadcast out loud. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to rattle some people, and a lot of people are going to disagree with what I have to say. That's fine. I'm here to talk about John Brown and the beginnings of the Civil War, which I think are extremely important. Everybody's focus, all the study on the Civil War, of course, naturally, is on how it played out, the actions of the battles and all that. So little attention has been devoted to the years preceding the Civil War and how it really fomented. Again, these things are always fomented. They don't happen overnight. They don't happen for one reason, in this case slavery. That's just never the case if you study war, okay? So we have John Brown here, the main agitator. I mentioned in my other video here at Harpers Ferry, or up at Boulevard Heights, that I think it's a real shame that when people think of Harpers Ferry, the first and last thing they think about is John Brown, because a whole lot of other stuff happened here. Armies passed through here multiple times. The civilians were under constant duress. It was a really ugly situation for everybody involved. And there's a lot more to the story of Harpers Ferry than just John Brown. Let me point that out first. Now, getting to John Brown, I want to say a few things. I was going to pull out my phone for some screenshots, and I'll try to do that again. But they're not coming through very well. Basically, I mentioned in another video that there was a man named Patrick Clausen once who worked for WINEP, Near East Policy think tank, who made a very startling mini speech once in public. Basically, he was rattling off all the false flags that have gotten the United States into basically every war that we've ever been in. He starts with the Spanish-American War and the sinking of the Lusitania. He moves on to, there's Pearl Harbor for World War II. There's John Brown for the Civil War. Moving forward, of course, there's the, what do we got? There's the Gulf of Tonkin for Vietnam War. There is always a casus belli. There is always a false flag to kick things off. These things do not start by themselves. There are always people managing affairs that don't make the news, okay? What else was I going to mention? Well, I was going to mention the fact that before we went on a 15-year spree of invading Muslim countries, there was 9/11. So you can put that one in your pocket too. So, but getting back to John Brown, I'm going to start off with some basic facts that a lot of people don't know about John Brown. First of all, John Brown was a Freemason, okay? As far as I mentioned Freemasons at Gettysburg in a lot of videos that I did up there. It's extremely important, and it's extremely ignored fact of this war and every other war that we've been in. And it shouldn't be, because at Gettysburg, the memorial for the Freemasons is placed very prominently. People walk right by it. They don't think anything of it. They don't ask who the Freemasons were, and they don't look into it. And that's a real shame, because if you want to understand this conflict, you have to see it through multiple perspectives, not one perspective that is handed to you. You have to dig around, and you have to find the other perspectives, the financial perspectives, the international perspectives, so on and so forth. Getting back to John Brown, he was a Freemason. He was originally from the Ohio chapter. Let me see if this might work better in the shade. I've got to kind of move through this here. Let's see. There we go. Hudson Lodge, Ohio, 1824. That's our guy John Brown, okay? First and foremost, and I'm sure a whole lot of people didn't even know that he was a Freemason. You know, some people did. And hats off to you guys, because there's more. Now, the next part, I will admit, it is not a smoking gun. There are not that many direct correlations, but there is plenty of causal correlation, and there's enough to basically paint the picture and feasibly understand that this very well could have been set up for us in advance. Again, as these things usually were. But okay, so in Italy, around the same time, Italy was going through its own civil war at the time. I'm not an expert on that subject, but basically there were about 20 provinces or prefectures that had all been split and fragmented. Italy had to pull its stuff together, and they were basically going through their own civil war at the time. It was just overshadowed by our civil war. Now, there were a couple extremely important people to mention here. It's basically, we have a tale of two Giuseppes. We have Giuseppe Garibaldi, and we have Giuseppe Mazzini. Both were from Italy. Both were politicians, but they were also theory guys, okay? They also basically were much like a lot of people with the American Civil War, a lot of people who got ideas together, gave them to the public, right? And they were kind of propaganda chiefs, right? Kind of like Edward Nast on the Christmas side, right? And the Union side in the Civil War. But a couple really important points are Giuseppe Garibaldi was so important and so sought after by our government to basically lead the Civil War. He actually asked to be the commander-in-chief, not just of the war, but of the nation until the war was over. That sounds crazy, right? The crazier part is we actually contemplated it. All right. The other Giuseppe is Giuseppe Mazzini. Again, he is a Freemason. He has, these folks basically both have a lot of connection to John Brown and to William Lloyd Garrison. Although, like I said, when it comes down to secret meetings, when it comes to handwritten notes and stuff like that, I mean, you're going to be hard pressed. I am still researching the topic, but there is plenty to suggest that, like I said, if there was not direct correspondence and correlation, that there were obviously extreme influences on the people over here on the our side of the Atlantic. People like John Brown, people like William Lloyd Garrison. Let me show you a little screenshot here because the last part is very, very important. So there was a meeting that I believe was held in London. I don't think it was held in Italy, where basically a whole lot of these folks met up. Okay, this gets really kind of confusing. There's a lot of information, so I am going to go to notes here, and I'm going to show you the notes too. By the way, they are from JSTOR. They're not from some silly.com. None of my information ever is. It is always from scholarly websites, government websites, what have you. Okay, that's not what I do. All right, I'm pretty serious about this stuff. Let me give you some screenshots here. Get back in the shade. And I'll read it to you because it's going to be kind of hard to make out. Sorry. All right, so. Secret history of the Civil War period in American history rather than the history of the subject. Massive new secret societies arose this side of enlightenment to cast their shadows across what would follow. One could argue that the something of articulate, educated, successful, politically active, middle-class gentlemen. Those are our Giuseppes, Garibaldi and Mazzini. Now, here is the meeting, and here is what I want you to key in on and perhaps research more on your own. Okay, this is really fuzzy, like I said. I didn't think it would be really good. In the wake of the revolts of 1848 to 1849, Americans rather quickly faced a proliferation of revolutionaries and secret societies that had disturbed the repressive powers across the continent. Sorry, I got to keep both screens lit up. In February 1854, here it is, here's the bread and butter. As yet unconfirmed, U.S. Consul George Nicholas Sanders hosted some of the most prominent emigres in London at a dinner marking the anniversary of the Republican outbreak. Ambassador James Buchanan, about to become President of the United States, joined the festivities that brought together Giuseppe Garibaldi, Giuseppe Mazzini, etc., etc. As you can see up at the top, that is from JSTOR. All right, that lays it out pretty plainly, doesn't it? It doesn't leave that much to the imagination, does it? You know, if you want to keep rooting around for a smoking gun, you know, we both could be waiting a long time. But like I said, the trail of influence is pretty clear. As far as direct meetings, direct correlations, we do have the meeting in 1854 that Sanders hosted. And by the way, it's really interesting how that went out, because initially he was on official business. As soon as the meeting went south, they changed their story and they said he's on unofficial business. That meeting in 1854 is extremely prominent, and I heartily invite all who are involved, all who are interested, really interested in the Civil War, not just the battles, not just glorifying a bunch of dead guys, but really understanding the causes of the Civil War, how we got into the Civil War, other things than slavery. That is what you need to look up. So I'm just under 10 minutes here. I think I'm going to wrap it up. You know, we can walk around here and maybe see a little signage real quick. I think I got in most of what I wanted to say. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention though, at Boulevard Heights, another reason why Harpers Ferry is so darn prominent and should be remembered for so many more things other than John Brown was the fact that after the second passing through at here at Harpers Ferry in 1862, when Stonewall Jackson was on the way to on his way to Antietam. That was actually the biggest, no, I did mention it. That was the biggest loss, the biggest surrender of Union troops or American troops in history until World War II. That's very prominent. That's a very important point. And I think that makes Harpers Ferry, like I said, extremely important in the scheme of things, and on top of it being a junction, and on top of John Brown, which is again is the beginning and the end of what most people understand and think of when they think about Harpers Ferry. There's a whole lot more to the story. There's Freemasons, there's all kinds of stuff, and here's something else about slavery. You know, look, last thing I'm going to say is, the National Park Service is really getting on the Me Too bandwagon. I really don't appreciate. I understand they have to go with the times. I know they're trying to draw more people to their parks, but I don't appreciate it. I don't appreciate the whitewashing of history. I, for one, do not appreciate it. That's where I'm going to sign off, guys. I'll see you on the next one.